Good evening. Welcome to the Adventurers Club of Los Angeles. I'm here tonight with Eric Streit, member 1166.
That's right.
So we're broadcasting all these programs during this pandemic because we can't actually be open to meet in person. Normally the Adventurers Club would have 60 to upwards of 200 people here enjoying these programs, but now we can only have 3 of us. Myself, the guest of the club, or member in this case, and Andy Medina, back there doing his thing. Andy, have you ever been in front of this camera? Come on, run up here, Andy. We missed this. We're on the wide shot.
Oh, shucks. All right.
Take a knee. That's one way to go. Yeah. This is Andy Medina. He's been our tech guy. He switches our cameras. He's been great this whole time. Thank you for everything you do, Andy.
Thank you, Rich.
Member 1211. Got inducted the same night I did. Cheers.
Cheers.
How come you only have one shoe on?
Because the other one is being used for the mic stand.
We might need to buy a mic stand for this place.
We're very
but,
professional here.
We're also very cheap.
Now,
So we try to do this as professional as possible.
Let me tell you something. I feel like when I was president of the club just a few years ago, the cameras we had were the old black and white 1910 that you could run with a crank. We actually have cameras, microphones, and lights.
Yeah. I'll tell you what.
What?
We did it cheap too.
Well, that's the nature of...
We scrounged everything out of that top projector room. We found tripods, but we did buy some stuff too.
Well, but you know what? These old tripods, they still work.
Exactly. But that old camera that shoots standard definition doesn't shoot the same as these 4K cameras.
There's an old movie camera up there somewhere, like a literal old movie camera. I think it belonged to Bob Silver. It's like a wind-up 1940s World War II surplus Bolex camera, and it takes 100-foot, 16-millimeter loads. And those things, they're warhorse. They still work.
Yeah.
They
Now
still
it's
work.
SD cards. Whole.
Yeah. When I first started shooting film, it was on an old Bolex wind-up. And I would shoot local news back in Paducah, Kentucky. I would get out of school, ride my bike over to the station. They would have a list of B-roll shots for me to get. I would get on my bike, I would run around, I would get the B-roll shots, go back to the news station. They would develop the film, and then they would have already cut the stand-ups and the story that the field reporters had done.
Just waiting for your stuff.
They're waiting for the B-roll with the 12-year-old, 13-year-old kid on a bicycle. They bring it in, develop it, and we would literally cut it with a razor blade, or if we were lucky enough to have an X-Acto knife, you'd cut it at a 45-degree angle. We'd use Scotch tape to tape it over, and then they would,
That is some old school shit right there.
the funny thing is, it was the 1980s. It
was
wasn't
the
that long.
80s?
Yeah, but I was in Paducah, Kentucky.
Like 2 years ago, we were still using that standard definition
Yeah.
XL1 camera.
Yeah.
But we've upgraded quite a bit since we started the show, and I think it shows.
You know what? I've been watching these. I've been out of town for almost a year, and seeing the transition for this virus time. The format is amazing. Even though there's no one here, it feels a lot more interactive. It feels live.
Yeah.
Because it is live. Here we are. We're live on you. I don't know if anyone's watching.
There's probably some people watching.
Now, I just want to say, I've done a lot of lectures here at the club. I think any of us who have been in the club for any amount of time, and I'm coming up on 10 years now, when we stand up there and lecture, it kind of sometimes feels like you're droning on ad nauseum, but I love the format that I can actually talk to you.
Yeah, I like it too.
Yeah, well,
It's fun.
it's the only
I get to
way.
hear a lot of good stories.
That's it.
Yeah. So if you are like Eric and you enjoy these, or if you're out of town or whatever, and you can't, well, nobody can make it to the club. So we kind of have a captive audience. But make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, I know that these interviews can get long. If you're not watching them live, you can watch them later. They're all on YouTube. And as well, we've started to put these up as podcasts. So if you're interested, like if you're driving somewhere and you want to throw up the Adventurers Club of Los Angeles podcast, we were coming up on all the podcast networks.
Really?
Yeah, like I
The
think
Adventurers Club, we have a podcast?
it's just this.
Just this, but it's a podcast.
It's a podcast.
That's crazy.
So, you can listen to this, and, sometimes I'll do that because I want to listen to the interviews again and hear the stories again, and I'll play it.
The stories are it's kept me. I feel like I've been actively involved in the club, even though I've been on the road since a year, March 2019.
Yeah.
But I've kept up and watched and seen. When you watch the live events, the live Thursday evenings, it was the one camera, it was the wide shot, but this just feels cool.
It's very engaging.
It is.
I appreciate that you appreciate it.
No, I
because Andy and I have been putting in some work on this. I mean, it's there's some behind the scenes stuff for two guys.
Well, you
But
can.
you know all about that. Right?
I know a little bit about
We're
behind the
We're
scenes
going to
stuff.
get into how you do your stuff in a minute. As a reminder, too, this is live, right? You can post questions in the chat, and afterwards, Eric will answer any questions.
I will answer any questions right now if you have any good ones for me.
Yeah. So, Eric.
Yes.
You are a showrunner, a producer, a director, a cinematographer, all these things. You're famous for a couple shows, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which ones did you do? You did
Hey, Rich.
Gator-
Sorry to interrupt, but the audio is out of sync still.
The
So
audio
the
is out of
audio is
sync.
out of sync.
On
Well, that's
YouTube.
okay.
How bad? People hate it.
In my ears,
I
it's
hate
not
it.
great. How is it on YouTube? Can someone in the chat let us know how
This
how
was a-
how big the delay is?
The delay was a big problem that that we noticed, like, what, 10 minutes ago?
See, I've been watching from Mexico, and I've just for the last
Just
few weeks,
assumed
and
it
I've
was
just
bad?
assumed that it was something to do with my VPN or, just I've got Google Fiber, by the way.
Yeah,
I have Google
down in Mexico?
I ran Google Fiber from the Google Fiber didn't exist before I
Yeah.
brought Google Fiber to Mazatlan. Yeah.
So, well, then, it must be us. Anyway, we're going to push through with this delay
Why
and
not?
maybe fix it later and re-upload this video.
So I wanna
we
make-
do apologize for the people watching live that it's probably disconcerting to watch our lips move significantly different paces. That sucks.
Well,
We'll fix it
does.
later.
So
But thanks for bringing that our attention, Andy. I don't think it's a showstopper, right?
I don't think it's a showstopper. I mean, the show must go on. This is live, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to fix it later.
Yes, so you're-
okay.
you're- go ahead.
So we're talking about all the shows that you've done.
Yes.
You've done like this Gator Boys show, and what do you
Gator
do on
Boys.
Gator Boys?
I was a showrunner on Gator Boys. I was out in the field kind of directing the show. I would write the outlines. A showrunner basically is in charge of all pre-production, production, and post-production, and is in charge of the creative aspects, the technical aspects, and the budgetary aspects of a show. So as a showrunner, you literally run the show.
So you're very much a hands-on person in the world of cinematography, and what's your specialty in terms of like genre?
It's funny. I do reality television, and I love reality television. And I was there for the dawn of reality television, so I feel like I was in on the ground floor of it. And back then, it was like a dirty secret. No one wanted to do reality television, and if you did reality, people would look down their nose and say, "Oh, why are you slumming like that? I only do feature films, or I do scripted shows." And I was
You do the things that make money.
well, that's the point. At the time I was working really hard trying to break in as a stand-up comic, and I was a member of the Friars Club, and which is legendary club that was Milton Berle, Buddy Hackett, Carl Reiner, who just passed away, Woody Allen, Sid Caesar, all of the Phyllis Diller, legends of comedy, and I remember that I was doing reality television, and one of my other friends was doing reality television, and everyone else was really, our peers in our age group were really giving us a hard time about it. And I was thinking, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. It's going to stunt my career. And I got called over to Sid Caesar's table. Mm-hmm. And Sid Caesar says, "So tell me about this." And he was very old. He says, "Tell me about this reality TV you're doing." He talked very quiet. He was in his 80s at this point. And so I said, well, what it is you basically come up with an outline, but the talent, you're putting them on television because they're interesting. So it's very much, kind of an interactive, it's almost like, I used to say it was very much like professional wrestling. You might have you might know the outcome,
But
you
everything
don't know-
else is impromptu.
But you don't know how you're going to get there.
Yeah.
So, and Sid said, "Now I hear people are really giving you a hard time about doing this and they're saying, you're slumming." I'm like, "Yes, sir, they are." And he said, "Well, what do you say to that?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I mean," he said, "Are they paying you well?" I'm like, "Sid, I've never made more money in my entire life. I've never made any money in my entire life. I'm a stand-up comedian since I got out of the Navy, and
Yeah.
the Navy didn't pay anything." And he said, "Well, when I first started doing this thing called live television back in the 50s, all of the big Broadway stars said that I was slumming and that it was a mistake and it would hurt my career." And he just went down a long list of names. And I'm like, Sid, I don't know any of those people are. He said, exactly. So, you know, that kind of
Exactly.
yeah, exactly. So that encouraged me to stay in reality television, because whenever you can get in on the ground floor of something and become good at it, and become skilled and have a craft and a trade and be good at it, you will work. And so I kind
There
of
you
like,
go.
I committed myself to doing, you know, it started out as a part-time job because I would go on the road and do stand-up comedy in the Pacific Northwest during the wintertime.
Yeah.
Dead of winter, stand-up comedy in South Dakota, North Dakota, Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, all the worst, horribly cold, frozen street states you can imagine. I would do one-nighters.
You were grinding it. You're
Oh,
pretty
man.
serious about it, huh?
Yeah, very serious about
Yeah.
it. But you know what? The people need it. I mean, the people in these small towns, when you would roll in, you know, at 5 a.m. you were doing the morning show on the radio, and then you'd go and do the morning television show. The local, you know, wherever the local television station was, whether it was, you know, Bozeman, Montana, or whatever small town, Idaho Falls, you'd go do the morning talk show on their live news, and then you'd go back and do the mid-morning radio show, and then you'd go back and do the noon news, and then you'd have a few hours off to go around town. I'd use that as an opportunity so I could inject some local humor about whoever happened to be, you know, the mayor or whoever was famous,
That's
or whatever
smart.
local scandals were going on.
Yeah.
I would find out what was happening there. I'd find out what the next town over was, and I would make
So
fun
you
of
feel like
them.
you connect with them a little bit
You
more.
connect with them immediately, you know.
Yeah.
The first time someone heckles you, if you're in Bozeman, you say, "What's that?" "Oh man, it sounds like you're probably from, you know, you're from Tyler, aren't you?" And then the whole audience is on your side. So that's what I was doing, and I think I was making like $100 a night, and selling tapes and T-shirts, and
You're getting to see the country too, right?
saw the whole country. Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole Pacific Northwest, you know.
Yeah.
And then I started, you know, and field producing reality shows was kind of my part-time job, because I was a horrible waiter. You know, I was no good as a wait staff. I would drop the tray, and I tried it 3 or 4 times, and
Get pissed off at customers?
I did. I beat up a customer once. And, you know, my first job out of the Navy, I was a waiter at a Mexican restaurant, and some kid, and we were paid, I think, $2.12 an hour. And the whole idea, the manager said, and if anyone dines and dodges, you have to pay that bill. And this kid ran up like a $200 bill in 1992.
Damn.
And I ran out and I pulled him out of his car. Mistake.
Right.
Big mistake. I should not have done that.
But you weren't getting on the hook for that $200.
No, I was not going to be on the hook for $200.
Which is super
$2
illegal,
an
by the
hour.
way.
Totally.
I don't know. What year was that?
1991, 92.
I'm pretty sure it was still
92.
illegal back
Yeah, it
then.
was right after Desert Shield and Desert Storm, and
Yeah.
it was, you know, suddenly it's like I pulled this kid out of his car and I took his money, and I'm like, "You're going to pay me, kid." And memories. You can't, you know.
Memories.
Yeah.
So tonight we're here to talk about this show that you did for the Travel Channel,
Yes.
right? For travel. Legendary Locations.
Legendary locations.
And you went to, we're going to talk about 3 locations that you went to and 3 stories. So what you would do, correct me if I'm wrong, you'd go to these locations
Yeah.
or this geographical area,
Yeah.
and then you'd shoot a little story about like a local legend.
Yes. Or a legend, you know, I didn't do Sleepy Hollow, but Sleepy Hollow, what I loved, and I want to make clear, I was not the showrunner of Legendary Locations. I was strictly a producer and director of different segments. And
But you were the man. They sent you, and how many other people were on your team on this one?
2.
2.
Two.
Wait, so there's you,
Me,
a
camera guy,
camera guy,
and another camera guy who was
Okay.
also the audio guy that was also the AC.
and then you had your talent there.
We had talent. We would cast local talent, you know, local actors to do the recreations, and then we'd have a local expert that was aware of the legend. So, and we'd have 2 days.
So a local crazy person.
Not always. I mean, no, some very legitimate historians. I mean, you know, the beauty of this show and why I really wanted to do this job is you know, it was delving in, you know, I kind of ignored the supernatural side of I have a deep interest in the supernatural, as some people at the club know, but I've always kind of shied away from that as far as like the shows I work on. I've always done reality. And when I got the opportunity to do a show that talked about legends, you know, in Sicily and Portugal and England and you know, Romania, I said, that is something I want to be part of. So I worked as just a regular, you know, just a journeyman producer, and And it was kind of I hadn't done recreations in, since the 1990s, but it was so much, it's like every segment was a mini movie. And, we had these shows are not done on huge budgets. So you've got, we had a really talented cinematographer, and the second camera operator was phenomenal. And then we would hire local television crew or local theater people or whoever, had access to costumes and props and locations. And it was almost like community theater with a camera in a way.
Right.
But what really held it together is the level of expertise of the people telling the story. And we would know the basic story. We did the pre-production and we dug into the story, but then on day one, the expert would be interviewed and tell us the story of the legend. And then, suddenly the story expands and gets bigger and bigger, and you realize, oh my gosh, what I planned for is not enough to tell this story from at this level and this scale. And then as soon as the day was done kind of telling of the story, we had to do the recreation of the story the expert told. And it was always, you had to wrap up at about 4 or 5 p.m. and then you start at this legendary location the next day. It might be an 11th century Templar castle in Portugal. It might be an old mansion in Bagira, Sicily. It might be a monastery in Sicily, or Fort Niagara in Niagara Falls. But they're shutting it down for you, and you're using Revolutionary War reenactors or French reenactors from the 17th century, and telling a story. And it's like each of these was a mini movie, and it was probably the most fun I've had in a long time, and one of my favorite shows that I've been a part of.
So and you got to go all these places.
Yeah.
That must be, so the 3 major places that you went to are upstate New York, right?
Yep.
Sicily.
Yep.
And Portugal.
And Portugal.
So what do you want to talk about first? Where do you want to take us first?
Well, just so we're staying, because of the virus and everything, let's kind of like at the moment, let's stay within the continental United States.
Okay.
Since we're not allowed in Europe right now.
We're not allowed in New York either.
Oh, we're not allowed in New York.
No, didn't you hear that?
No, we're not allowed in New York.
Yeah, I think they're shutting down travelers from certain states, and California might be one of them.
Wow.
Is that New York, or maybe it's, I don't know.
I have no idea, but I do want to say that when this whole thing started, I was doing a show called Buddy versus Duff, and
Buddy versus Duff.
Buddy versus
These are 2
Duff.
people.
They're 2 people. You don't know Buddy versus Duff?
No.
Dude, where you been all your life? This is the
no.
#1 show on Food Network.
Okay.
Buddy versus.
Not on Food Network.
Well, I mean,
Been watching Gordon Ramsay. He's been cooking up a storm in lockdown.
No,
that guy got locked down and he started putting all his stuff out on YouTube. Anyway, Buddy versus Duff.
Buddy and Duff are the world's premier cake makers. They make amazing cakes, and Buddy was on TLC, and Duff was on Food Network, and then there was this big merger, and suddenly you got Buddy and Duff, and they can be on the same show, and they just build these elaborate cakes.
They taste good?
Oh man, delicious.
You got to taste them.
Oh, I got to taste every day. When the show's done and you've got a cake that's taller than the ceiling, something's got to happen. I ate the Millennium Falcon.
I feel like there's a lot of fondant in that, though.
No,
And like the good cakes, I
am not a baker.
Sprinkles cupcake.
I am not a baker.
You can't beat a Sprinkles cupcake.
I am not a cook. I do a very poor job when it comes to food. I can make an omelet.
It's important.
And I can make a grilled cheese sandwich.
Also important. You use mayo?
Mean hot dog.
Put mayo on your grilled cheese?
I put mayo on everything.
Yeah.
I put mayo on everything.
Let's get back. We're in New York.
Okay,
right?
so we're in New York.
We're talking about legendary
locations.
So, you were in New York.
I was in New York.
And I heard something about Fort Niagara.
Fort Niagara. There is a phenomenal story about Fort Niagara, the headless French soldier.
Lots of headless people going on in New York.
A lot of headless people happening in New York. But in the 17th century, the French were kind of like, they were the primary colonists of what is now the United States. And the British were starting to come in, so the French had this Fort Niagara, and they had a really good relationship with the local Seneca Indians or the natives, and they would have parties, and you know, and two officers got in a fight. They both had a crush on a local woman, and it got really tense. And the senior officer chopped the junior officer's head off, threw his head out the window of the fort, which I got to do the recreation of, which was a heck of a
I think we got a picture of that
I
fort.
think you've got a picture of the fort, and I think there's a picture of the head being thrown out the window.
Let's see that, Andy.
actually.
Andy's
And
working furiously over there.
trying to
This
find
is
it.
Niagara Falls. Check.
Yeah, the
Let's see
Niagara
that
Falls.
fort.
Yeah, we want to
Let's
see
see
the
that fort. Where's that fort, Andy? That's some church. That's not it.
That's not it. No, that's in
no,
Sicily.
no,
man.
no,
That's
no.
the Devil's Letter. There's Annie Edson Taylor, but that's a different story that I did in Niagara.
All right. Let us know when you got that Fort Niagara up
Fort
there.
Niagara. But anyway, so what happened is this guy chopped the other soldier's head off, threw it out the window. Then he heard people coming, so he took his body and threw it in the well.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so he threw the headless body in the well.
Ah, we got the fort up now.
Got the
Let's
fort.
see that fort.
That's old Fort Niagara, and it is one of the most beautifully preserved 17th and 18th century forts that exist.
You think
in the
they
world.
had that lawn in the 17th century?
You know,
I
I
don't
bet.
know.
You know, have you been to France? They have beautiful lawns in
That
France.
is true.
I believe that they might not have had that. I think that grass is the great 100 grandchildren of the original grass of the original lawn that the French planted back then. It looks like something Lafayette would have approved of.
So what happened to this JO? Did he come back and haunt that senior officer
Yes.
like a good JO?
He came back
That's
like a good junior officer, and he haunted old Fort Niagara. The well is still there that he was thrown into, and still late at night, when the moon is full and the lights are low, if you are walking by, you can hear him and see him walking headless through all of old Fort Niagara. And we did a recreation of this. Now, let me tell you, on a low budget,
How do you do a headless person?
it ain't easy.
Do you do it later in post and
No.
like cut it?
It was, you know,
Cut out the head?
It was a very, you know, because you've got a day of telling the story and a day of the recreations. We had a green screen suit,
Ah,
and we had the actor. We wanted to have the actor put the green screen suit on, but you know, the number of people that are reenactors of 17th century French army people, there's not a lot of them.
okay.
And they all tend to be hefty.
Ah, so he couldn't fit
So he
the green
couldn't
screen.
fit in the
He
green
wasn't that
screen.
lanky little
No.
like green screen
No,
guy.
it
that's-
did not fit, and it was an extra large green screen suit, so it would fit me. But we had to like cut the head off and put it on him because the rest of it wouldn't fit. And you know, it turned out amazingly well. I mean,
Now there's a headless green screen suit haunting
there's a
something.
headless. But I think I've got a picture there, Andy, of the.
Now if you go across
shot.
Fort Niagara, there's a headless JO walking around next to a headless
Right,
green
there he
screen.
is right there. There's the headless. There he is. That is the headless soldier, the headless
Nice.
French soldier. And I thought it came out really well. It was a fun segment, and it was like making a suspenseful horror movie in a day. We had one day, and it was just so much fun. And we hired local actors and local reenactors, and
Did you
they
not
did
turn
a
your
great
phone
job.
off?
I'm
What the
going to
hell?
turn my phone off. I didn't even know I had it in my
Jeez,
pocket.
look at this guy.
So
Okay, so after Fort Niagara, where'd you go to?
After Fort Niagara, I did another story in.
Do you need a minute?
No, this is Michael Lawler. Michael Lawler, who actually, you know, our past president, Michael Lawler, he's texting me saying, I'm with the Queen of Redonda on Traveler at the Isthmus, Catalina, and hope you will be able to stream your program. He has poor signal strength. I'm going to tell him it's streaming now. It
Yep.
is streaming, right, Andy?
Yes, it is streaming now. And Michael can
we are
watch it
streaming.
when he regains stuff. All
I'm going
right.
to tell him it's streaming now, sir. So then we did a recreation of Annie Edson Taylor, who was the first woman
And where was this?
to ever go in Niagara Falls. The first woman to go over Niagara Falls in a barrel.
In a
the
barrel.
first person.
So I think we have a picture of this girl, right?
Yeah, we have the real Annie Edson Taylor, and that's our reenactor. And I was able to find a woman. We cast a woman who looked so much like the real Annie Edson Taylor, and she actually did she did storytelling.
Did she go over in a barrel?
She
for
did
this
not,
episode?
She did not go over in a barrel for this episode.
Do they let people do that still?
No, too many people. Since Annie did it first and she survived, because she padded the barrel, she made sure it was watertight.
All things that people did not do.
The
Lesson
wonderful-
learned.
You know, here's the
Hey,
fun-
they
you know,
survived. They're dry, but they're beat to shit in there.
It was a very different, I think it was in the 1890s or the very early 1900s, and Annie she'd been a piano teacher and a dance instructor, but she was single all of her life, and she didn't have money, and back then there was no Social Security, and she was 62. And she's like, what am I going to do?
How am I
have
gonna
no
feed
money.
these
How am I
cats?
not going to end up in the poorhouse? How am I going to feed my cats?
Yeah.
Which plays into the story in just a minute, by the way. The cats, I'm glad you brought that up. So she came up with this crazy idea that she was going to go over Niagara Falls in a barrel, spend all the last money she had to make this barrel, and she was going to get famous and pose for pictures and tell her story on the lecture circuit, which was a very new thing at the time.
Right.
So she went to a barrel maker in Niagara Falls who specialized in whiskey barrels and said, I want you to make me a barrel, and I want it to be padded like a mattress, and I want it to have shoulder straps that I can tighten, and I want it to be airtight, and I want to use they used a bicycle pump to suck all of the air out of it, and then tagged it with a cork. She put her cat in the barrel and did a test run with the cat, and her decision was, if the cat lives, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And the cat lived. And the cat was
Furious.
not a happy cat.
No.
But, you know, the cat went right home. So, I mean, it couldn't have bothered the cat that much. So she put herself in the barrel, went over Niagara Falls, got very famous, but her publicity man had lied about her age and said she was 42. He hired his girlfriend to play Annie Edson Taylor, stole the barrel, and Annie Edson Taylor died broke anyway.
Jeez.
Tragic tale. But
Did she come back and haunt someone?
she did not come back and haunt anybody.
But that cat did.
But she inspired the first generation of real stunt people. It was her example going over Niagara Falls that kind of inspired the film, the first silent serial, The Perils of Pauline. And, you know, The Perils of Pauline was a serial film that, it was silent in the silent film days, and it was the original, what would you call it, the original inspiration for cliffhangers.
Huh.
So she lives on today. You can go to her grave there, and Annie Edson Taylor's grave is in the cemetery, and then every stunt person who's ever died going over Niagara Falls, even though Annie didn't die, all the other stunt people that have died are lined up next to her like the great books of the Western world as a testament to Annie being a trendsetter, the world's
She's the first one.
first. I think you could say that Annie was probably the world's first professional stunt woman.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And we got to send a barrel over the falls, which,
You did?
Yeah. No one was in it, but we sent a barrel over the falls and we shot it, and it was a heck of a lot of fun.
That's sweet.
Oh, it was so much fun. I love
Do we
it.
have a picture of the barrel or no?
I don't think
That
I
you
brought
sent
a
over?
picture of the barrel, but I will say the show is available on Amazon Prime.
Right.
It's a great, a great show, and I would recommend it to anyone. You know, there's, I think it's in its 4th or 5th season now.
Right.
And,
I mean, these are the things that you want to see when you travel, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like when you go to some place, every so there's the natural wonders of the world, right?
Niagara Falls is one of them.
Yeah, but then you also want to hear these cool stories about
Absolutely.
what people have done at those places.
Well, and that, when you talk about adventure, the whole reason, to be in this business, to be in the TV business, is to be able to, for me anyway, it's about being able to travel, meet interesting people, and see parts of the world that I otherwise would never be able to go to. So to be able to go to Niagara Falls and hear from the people, the historians that know all of those cool stories, to go to Fort Niagara and talk to the people that know these ghost stories, the historians, that will share these tales. And, honestly, when you're making a television show, you don't have to wait in line.
Yeah.
You get to go before it opens, or in some instances, they will actually close the place down for you. And it's a really fun opportunity when you're doing that kind of thing.
Yeah. So your next stop in New York was a pretty spooky place, right?
The next
Tell
stop
me
in
about
New
the
York,
next one.
it was an asylum. It was an insane asylum, and it had been an insane.
Can we use that
asylum.
word still?
Well, the original sign was still in concrete on the original plinth. You know what a plinth is, right?
No.
A plinth is back when you used to, everything was, when they went from stone, building a door with stone, and they started pouring concrete. It was very revolutionary because then they could do a doorway of poured concrete so it was perfectly straight. Well, the top part is called a plinth.
Okay.
And in the doors back starting in the mid 1800s, the plinth would sometimes be stamped with what you were walking into. And the plinth says Insane Asylum. And
So I feel like there's going to be a really creepy story behind this one.
the whole thing was creepy.
And which insane asylum was it? Do you remember?
For the life of me, I can't remember, but it's the
Andy's on it.
It's the first segment of the first episode, or the second segment of the first episode, and it was truly
Here's a picture of it.
wow. Yeah.
Yeah. I bet some
No,
bad.
that's not it. That's not it. That's actually
That looks
Old
like it.
Fort Niagara. That's where
Oh.
we chopped the guy's head off.
Also,
But, also
so,
a creepy place.
creepy
honestly,
place.
You know, it's legendary.
but we have a picture of that, right? The insane asylum.
No, we do not. I did not. I did not include a picture of the insane asylum because I thought, well, I'll talk about Old Fort Niagara and Annie Edson Taylor. But the insane asylum, Andy could probably Google it real quick. If you Google Legendary Locations Episode 1 Insane Asylum, I bet a Season 2 Episode 1, I bet something would pop up.
Okay.
But the lady that ran it, she bought it.
The lady that ran it,
No.
she bought it.
No. I'm sorry.
Or the lady that currently owns it had
A
bought
lady that currently owns it lives there.
it. Ooh.
And she has a deep connection to the spirits.
Ah.
And,
She keeps them at bay. She keeps them happy.
She keeps them happy. She communes with them.
Ah.
She believes in them. I believe in them. I mean, there's a certain energy that you feel when you go into an old asylum.
Like, I want to get out of here.
That's what some people feel. But then you got
Oh, you want to get drawn in?
you
get that feeling?
You might not
Here's
necessarily want to
here,
get drawn.
this
in.
is it?
That's not it. But
We're going to get there
we'll get there.
eventually.
But-
that's another creepy insane asylum.
this place,
Northeast has some places. Bad
but,
shit went down.
Having her walk around and tell all of the different stories of the different people who had lived there and occupied the place, and the different patients, all the old files were still there. And so you knew who had stayed in this room.
What?
Or
They
that.
left the files there?
Everything
Oh my
is
God.
still there. Everything. And it was just
Like the shock therapy room and stuff?
everything.
Oh my God.
When you hear about people talking about the rubber room, that was a real thing.
Damn.
It was real.
And this
it's
lady
still-
lives there.
She lives there.
And she just,
She is, she's a very, she does haunted tours, and she,
Yeah.
she obviously, for feature films, she rents it out as a film and television location. But just to go there and tell that story and, do a recreate, it was like making a miniature horror movie in a day. But the beauty of this one is that, it wasn't just one story. It was so many stories. And I gotta say, when the sun went down, you felt something. There was a certain energy, a certain air. You felt a presence that you don't feel.
I'm out. I'm out.
You're okay, not your thing? Well,
I'd want to be there, and then I would want to leave.
so you would not be down for like a late night insane asylum tour in upstate New York
No, I'd be down. I just want to leave.
when the tour is over. I didn't
Exactly.
want to stay. I didn't.
Yeah, I wanna stay.
Believe me, I didn't want to move in.
Yeah,
I wanted to tell this amazing story and feel that energy.
exactly. I want the experience. I don't want any more. For instance, if I came home and all the drawers were open and everything was just open, I'd be like, okay. I'd just turn around and leave.
You'd go check in.
I'd call my wife. I'd be like, "You're not home, are you?"
How
Okay, yeah, we need a new house now.
Do we have any Marriott reward points at the moment? Because I think we're going to stay away from home in a few days.
Yeah, just leave it.
The whole idea of the supernatural and ghosts, I grew up with that. Haints, hot steams, secret signs, secret histories. To me, that's fascinating. And this show was my first opportunity to really delve into that and put any of it on camera. And it was just a lot of fun. And the scarier the story was, the more fun, the more creative opportunity you have there. And that kind of after New York, I went to Sicily.
Well, I have heard that you're into vampires.
Yes.
I've heard that you're a vampire guy. You got the red shirt on.
Yes, I am a vampire guy. I love vampires.
Because that's a little supernatural, right?
It's very supernatural.
But okay, so spirits and energy.
Spirits,
where do you come down on vampires?
I believe in vampires.
Like True Blood is a couple years off,
Most people don't believe in this stuff.
Okay.
So I try not to put it out there because I don't want to be ridiculed. But I believe in the possibility. I believe in the history. And I think that they are fascinating. What if?
So what if, what if someone gets off because they like to drink blood? Or what if there is a immortal being that you can only burn at the stake? What level of vampire are you into?
Well, I believe in the legends.
Yeah?
Yeah. And
Which
I
ones?
think that vampire legends, Dracula, Vikram. I think every age and every generation there's an author that stands out who's introduced to vampires. And I think that it's because they have had actual interactions and they're moved to tell those stories.
What about aliens?
Yeah, why not? Why not? Of course. You think look, there's 1 billion planets out there, man.
Yeah?
Who are we to think we're the only sentient beings with reason? And I mean, that's...
So do you think vampires would be aliens? Or
No.
do you think that they would be just been hanging out on planet Earth for a long time in the shadows? And every once in a while, they have to spin a legend the right way so people don't freak out.
Yeah, well, someday I will dig deep into the whole vampire thing, and I would love to...
Yeah, tonight's program's not about vampires.
This is not about vampires, but,
But I've been drinking scotch and I'm interested,
okay.
so
Well, here, let's
cheers.
do it. Cheers to you. But as far as the legendary locations go...
Yeah, you moved to Sicily
Moved
next,
to
right?
Sicily. And now there's a phenomenal story.
Are you Sicilian?
My wife is Sicilian.
Okay.
And we were actually property hunting. We were going to go over this. We should be there now. I was going to spend my birthday, which is coming up in a week, in Sicily, and we were going to go property hunting.
Doesn't Travel Channel have a show for that?
I hope so. They
I
might.
think, like beachfront Sicily. Beachfront bargain hunters.
Yeah, all of those shows.
Eric wants a beachfront property in Sicily, but he only has a budget of $50,000. Let's see what his realtor says.
Right now, Eric wants a beachfront property in Sicily and has a budget of like $300.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But,
so as long as zero down payment, mortgages
They-
are very easy to get these days.
They are giving houses away in Sicily right now for €1. All over Sicily, all over Italy. You can get houses.
That's a trap.
No, it's
There's
not.
there's a trap.
It is not a trap. Here's the deal. You wanna know the deal?
Taxes.
Nope. You go over and you go to these villages, and what's happened is these are houses, some of them have sat abandoned for decades because, Sicily has 40% unemployment, 25% unemployment.
So it's been empty for decades. So they just want someone to make a
Yeah.
freaking vacation thing.
They want someone to come in, make the house livable, and set up roots.
They'll seize it from you later.
Yeah, no, there's people doing this, man.
You can get a house for $1 in Sicily.
Here's the trick. Yes, you can, but if
But
you're
you gotta
gonna-
commit.
You have to commit. You have to put down a $5,000 bond with the city, and you have to restore the home to livable within 3 years.
Oh, okay.
And if you don't, they get to keep your money.
I feel like that's your game, though. Like your mystery house in Mazatlan, you did exactly that.
The Mystery House in Mazatlan continues to be built.
I mean, it'll never stop.
It will never stop. That
Yeah.
Mystery House in Mazatlan will continue for many decades to come. We're getting, there's a 3rd floor happening, man.
There's a 3rd floor?
Yeah.
Do you
No,
need
well, there
more
isn't.
space there?
Yeah, can you ever, the higher up you go, the better the view is.
That's
really,
true.
and
You get this view from your balcony in Mazatlan, right? The Pacifico view?
this right here. I look at that from my balcony every night in Mazatlan,
Hold that up for the camera.
right there.
That's nice.
That's my view.
Yeah.
I was just there for 5 weeks.
Okay, so you want to buy a house in Sicily.
So we want to buy
But
a
we're
house
getting
in
off
Sicily.
track
We're
again. This is
getting
going to
way off
happen.
track.
This is going to happen a lot tonight, folks, because I have Eric Streit here.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Sorry. It's just the way it's going to be. But you went to Sicily, and
Went to Sicily.
what stories were you there to tell?
my favorite story in Sicily was in Palma di Montechiaro, and it's in the region of Agrigento, which is my favorite part of Sicily. And the story is about Sister Maria Crocifiuta and the Devil's Letter.
No.
So, Sister Maria Crocifiuta was a nun, and she lived in a convent, and she was a very well-educated person. She was.
Is this her? Before Andy puts it up, is that her?
That is her. She is now beatified, and she was tortured emotionally because she kept having these terrible dreams.
You're that
And
guy
I'm
that
gonna-
always has his cell phone on.
Yeah, I'm going to turn this off right now.
Thank you. That's considerate.
I forgot it was
That you
on
would turn your cell phone off for your freaking interview.
When the president of the Adventurers Club, the past president, Michael Lawler, reached
You're the
out.
president of the Adventurers Club.
I was the president of the Adventurers Club. 2 terms, man.
Michael was too.
Yes.
He can wait. He can watch the show later.
Okay. Michael, I hope you're watching right now, and we will soon get to your episodes of Legendary Locations, sir. Coming up soon.
Cut to commercial.
Cut to commercial. But Sister Maria Crocifiuta, she was possessed by the devil, and she wrote this letter. I think it was in the 1400s. I think before Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue, Sister Maria Crocifiuta was possessed by the devil and wrote this letter. And they could never decipher it. It's been a mystery.
They still have the letter,
The letter still exists.
and they can't decipher it.
They can.
Now they can.
Now, what happened with Google
Computers.
Translate and
Yeah.
computer algorithms,
AI
a
that
team
shit,
of
right?
scientists have been working on it, and we told the story of Sister Maria Crocifiuta, and basically we talked to a team of psychologists and a team of computer algorithm, computer
Right.
linguists.
Okay.
And there are 3 different theories that Sister Maria Crocifiuta was either the letter was she was truly possessed, and the devil was writing out a letter,
Okay.
or she could have been schizophrenic and was suffering from manic episodes when she thought the devil was speaking through her, and she wrote these letters, or she was just doing it, it was just like P.T. Barnum. She was doing it,
Yes.
or something. But
Which I would hope that in my life I would come up with such a prank. You know what I'm saying?
600 years later,
600, I've always thought about this. Like, what if you went out to the middle of Nevada, bought a piece of land, whatever, and erected a monument and just wrote something on it? Made up your own language, just made it real weird. No other purpose. Your primary goal is that this survives for like 1,000 years.
okay. Well,
So 1,000 years later, someone will dig it up and be like, what the hell is this thing?
Well, we have that. Do you
And they're
have a
trying to
picture of
figure it
the-
out.
There's the letter.
Here's
right
the letter.
there.
Yeah, let's
That's
pull the letter out.
Look at that letter.
So there's a chance that this letter is someone's
There's
epic,
a chance.
epic practical joke.
Performance art.
Performance art. Could be.
14th or 15th century performance
Or
art. But
it
you
could
look
be
at
the
that.
devil.
It could be the devil.
Or she could be crazy.
Or she could be, we don't use that word anymore. Back then, and
We don't use insane either, do we?
I don't think we do, but we did. So here we are.
But not a great PC
but
show.
What's fascinating about this is when linguists started really digging into it, they found that, as I said earlier, she's very educated. And it was a combination. There was no one complete word in one individual language, but it had Greek, Aramaic, Latin, and Runic.
Huh.
It was a combination. Each word was a combination of 2 to 4 of the letters, and they've started comparing the letters that are in Greek and Runic, and they're trying to put together what this letter says. So it's interesting that someone could be in the middle of a manic episode and basically combining 4 different languages into one to craft a letter that we're still trying to decipher 500 years later.
So do they have a translation of it yet, or
They
no?
have a translation of one line of the letter that they feel pretty solid.
And tell me what it said.
Something about the devil, I don't remember. We shot these in 2 days.
Make it all witchy.
No,
right?
well, yeah,
what was it that what's his name said? Charles Manson.
I have Helter Skelter, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like make it look witchy.
Make it look witchy.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
And this was one of my favorite
Nut job.
recreations because we had a phenomenal fixer by the name of Giuseppe. Well, I was just talking to Giuseppe today, and he was an amazing fixer, and he was originally from Sicily, and he's living in Rome working in films, and he came home, and when I said we need, to do this Devil's Letter, he got us a full-scale monastery in his grandmother's hometown.
And that's this picture that
Yes.
of the monastery that we had earlier.
The monastery that we had earlier
Yeah.
was like in his hometown. The priest, just let us shoot there. He said, Giuseppe's a good boy. No charge for this location. It
Nice.
was amazing.
Here it
And-
is.
Oh, just
That is
absolutely
gorgeous.
beautiful. If you scan through there, there's a couple of more photos.
Yeah, that's
and
just
it was
amazing.
Just amazing. And we got to, everything there. That's Palma de Montechiaro. Which is, where the
Wow.
letter is. And we were able to do these reenactments because they still had the relics and different artifacts from the time that she was there, and it was just amazing to
Yeah.
be able to touch history. And that's what I love about this club.
You got to touch that?
Yes. Well, I
Wow.
mean, yeah, we had to have white gloves, and
But
there was
yeah.
because it's a 500-year-old letter, and they show it to us. They pull it out of a drawer, and it was under glass, and the glass was airtight, and all the oxygen was sucked out, and they opened it and let us shoot it for 3 minutes, the actual original letter.
Wow.
And again, it doesn't feel the same as the Asylum, but when you're in the presence of that kind of history and that kind of mystery, it just puts you in a certain place.
Yeah.
And you want to, you can taste it, man. To be in the presence of history.
Yeah.
And a legend, a ghost story, a tale of supernatural possession.
So this really is like the next level, because I mean, everybody when you travel, you want to see this stuff. You want to.
Yes. Yeah.
But you got to see it at a different level. Like you actually got to, like the most exclusive up close look
we got to
see this,
interview
and talk to the people.
Yes, talk
that
to
knew
the
the most
people
about
that
it.
know the most about it. We went and talked to the Mother Superior at the nunnery that is named that is. What's interesting is she comes from a wealthy family, Sister Maria Crocefuccia. So the nunnery that she lived in was donated by her family to the order.
So she wouldn't be condemned probably, because the devil stuff.
Yeah, the devil stuff.
Yeah.
And,
Normally you don't get you
you don't get beatified
beatified
if you're
if you've been possessed.
if you've been possessed by the devil.
Yeah.
But she was is a fascinating story, and to fit all of that into an 8 to 10 minute segment is tough. And I've always wondered why. And it's funny. It's not a story that's well known outside of Sicily. That's what's so great about this show. You're finding out about these legends that are hundreds of years old that people didn't know about. I would be amazed if Blumhouse or one of those companies that are doing super amazing horror movies don't latch on to this Devil's Letter and make a film about it, because it's an incredible story about 15th century schizophrenia.
Yeah, I can see how that would go.
Yeah.
You have a computer translate the message, and then someone reads it, and it's like opening King Tut's tomb. It releases something onto the world. Let's not do that in 2020.
No,
we
let's
got
try
enough
not
shit
to
going
do
on,
that.
right?
And
So after this Devil's Letter in Sicily, because you had a couple more stories.
right.
Where else
Then we
you
did
go?
this very funny story about the ugliest man in the history of Sicily.
That's a
super
bummer.
rich. Oh, no. It was an amazing
He
story.
was super rich?
Yeah, super rich, and he had inherited this palace from his
The Beauty and the Beast?
No, it is very, it is kind of a foundational thing about Beauty and the Beast, but the story itself is very different. Andy, if you were to Google Bagheera, Bagheri,
This is the hardest
Bagheera,
Google
Sicily,
challenge.
and
We've
look
ever
for
had.
the the castle with 600 statues. So he was the ugliest man of the age. And again, this is like the 16th century, I think, maybe the 15th. And he had this magnificent
His
palace.
hideousness is
His
world-renowned.
hideousness- Oh, world-renowned. Everyone knows that, but he's like Bill Gates rich,
Right.
but just ugly as a box of rocks.
They write gold digger songs about him.
That's what happened, because he married this beautiful young woman, the most sought after maiden
She's
in
taking
all
my
of
money
Bagheera.
when I'm away.
So they get married, and she lives in this big palace, and he's so deeply in love with her, and then he finds out, looking out the window one guy, that she's slipping out the side door.
Oh.
Not just once, not twice, lots of different boyfriends. He's much older, she's much younger, but still, he's brokenhearted. In addition to being brokenhearted, though, he was also filled with rage.
Is this the ugly guy?
That is one of the statues that he erected as a result of his young wife's infidelity. He flew into such a rage that he started having statues erected of all of the different men he suspected were having relations with his wife. And he built 600 of them.
So every time he thought some guy was in a relationship with his wife, he'd build a statue of
Build
him.
a statue of them. And he'd make them uglier than they really were. And ultimately, there were 600 terrifying statues. And, and he was a complete maniac. And,
Did he wheel him into his wife's bedroom at night?
he put...
like while she's sleeping, he wheels it in. Like there's like 6 of these statues.
There's a giant. It's in the center of town, as the wealthiest guy historically, the rich guy's house was, and there's these about 15-foot walls that are about this thick, and these statues are all over, lining the walls, and there's gargoyles and monsters and hunchbacks and you name it, and they all have these looks of terror, but according to legend, they looked enough like the subject.
People knew it was up.
People knew what time it was, and those guys would kind of like, I don't think so. And interestingly, in the grand ballroom in the dance hall, which is still there, it's magnificently preserved palace, and it's still, I don't speak very good Italian. My wife does. But it seems like, the house has been in the same family for a long, long, long time. So, it's interesting that they know the history very well.
Is this the grand ballroom?
That is the grand ballroom. And it is just, he had all of those mirrors on the ceiling of that grand ballroom are trick mirrors, like funhouse mirrors. He was like he had these mirrors made so when people were at his parties and they looked up, they would see what they would look like
If they look like him.
if they looked like him. They would see themselves, very deformed or in weird shapes, fat, skinny, twisted, whatever. And, back then, the dances, you looked up. And it was, some of those mirrors, you can still see your reflection in them 400 years later.
Wow.
And again, it was an opportunity to be on the grounds of this palace with an amazing legend behind it and really dig in with the local historians who know the lore, who know the stories, the family members whose great, super, 25th great grandfather was the ugliest man in the region of Palermo. This is, now it's part of the district of Palermo, but back then it was its own little village called Bagheera, and it's right on the water.
Right.
And the palace, it is one of the most beautiful palaces I've ever been in. And you can stay there relatively inexpensively.
At the palace?
At the palace, in the palace. And it's interesting because in the center of the palace, it's kind of like the shape of a Y, but then there's housing all around because, it took 100 servants to run a palace.
Mm-hmm.
And, and there's people that, family members live in all of those apartments.
Huh.
And you can rent out the palace for events or as a hotel or as a film location. And really, the tile work is original. A lot of the statues are, they don't have 600, in half a millennia. Some of those statues are going to crumble and fall away, but so
Right.
many of them are still there.
But of course, who's going to steal an ugly statue?
I would steal an ugly statue.
You might steal
If
a
I were
statue.
thief. If
the
I were a
statue
thief,
of David, like
I
you
don't-
see that Adonis, right?
Everyone's got
But,
a
like,
statue of Davis. Of
David.
I've got a
but
statue
you
of
want to
David.
see perfection in a statue, but these were intentionally grotesque.
They were intentionally grotesque, but they were done by some of the finest Italian artisans of the day. Because he was a very vengeful man, and the money
He was very vengeful.
very vengeful, and the money he spent. We did. I don't remember the number, but you would have to have like Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, mad crazy money to be able
That's
to.
the equivalent of like making a movie about a guy that you hate, right?
It's
You're like, oh man, this guy slept with my wife. Make an awful movie about him. Like get Michael Bay to direct a movie about this guy and just make him look awful. Make a disaster artist movie about this guy.
That is funny. I'm trying to remember we did another segment in Sicily, and I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. We did the Devil's Letter. We did the ugliest guy in the universe. For the life of me,
Let's move to
Portugal.
Portugal.
Wow, what a place!
Yeah,
What an amazing spot to go to.
it's beautiful.
Oh, just one of the most beautiful places. And I'd been to Lisbon back in the 80s and 90s when I was in the military, and I was a member of the American Club of Lisbon, and I always, was kind of like an expat.
Is this where you ruined your credit and stole a jet ski?
No, where I
Okay.
ruined my credit and stole a jet ski was in Villefranche-sur-Mer, and I missed ship's movement. I'd been out the night before, and I stayed out a little too late.
What rank were you?
I was a third-class petty officer at the time.
Okay.
And we were supposed to be back to the ship by 2 a.m., and I made it to the docks, but the Liberty boat had disappeared. The Liberty boat went without me, and I just laid down in the bushes and went to sleep and figured they'd send a boat over in the morning.
They did not.
They did, but I slept through it because the bushes were
You had
very
so many
comfortable.
chances.
I had so many opportunities, and then I looked out on the horizon, and I saw my ship. USS, there's a ship right out
you're
there on
screwed.
the horizon. There she goes. And I knew that missing ship's movement was that's punishable by a court-martial. At the very least, you're going to captain's mast. And I knew where the ship was going next, but I didn't have much money in my pocket because I'd been out the night before, and as sailors, you're a Navy guy, we weren't paid much money. And
Well, I was.
I
Sorry.
you were an officer. I was an enlisted
I was a
guy.
nuke, man.
Yeah,
We
you were
got
a
that sweet nuke
you
money.
You got like 30,000. No, back when I was in, you got a $30,000 bonus
Damn.
to be a nuke.
I don't think it was that good.
No?
It was close, though.
Oh well,
Anyway.
Anyway, I was not a nuke, but I was a personnelman. Did a few things. But I had just gotten I was 19 years old, I guess, and I had gotten my first credit card that had a $200 limit. So there was a jet ski rental place, and I went and I said, I'm not gonna. And I was, I'd been partying the night before, and I said, I'm not gonna miss ship's movement, even though technically I already had. So
The ship is moving at this
the
point.
ship is moving. The ship has moved, and it was out past the breakwater. So technically, it was in the middle of it was in the Mediterranean Sea, and I rented a jet ski, and I had to put the deposit down, and I had to leave my credit card with this guy. And I did. I left my credit card with this guy.
I don't know what happened to my credit
I
card.
don't
I
know.
was drunk that
He
night.
still got it. It might be a souvenir because I took that jet ski and I turned it on. And jet skis were pretty new. This was in the 80s. This would have been 1989, I think. And I went as fast as I could as that jet ski, and I caught my ship. And I was jumping the waves, man, jumping and jumping. I caught my ship, and the captain, rather than, usually when something approaches a U.S. naval vessel, a U.S. warship, they blow you out of the water.
Right.
But I think my captain knew something was up because he brought the ship to full stop, and he's like, Streit, is that you? And, I don't know if you've ever been in the Mediterranean when there's high, it wasn't high seas, but those swells, you're looking at six
Yeah.
feet, and I'm on a jet ski, and I pull up alongside the ship, and I'm up on the starboard bridge wing is where I want to go, and there's a Jacob's ladder, and I'm like, I gotta stand up on this thing and and I managed to grab the Jacob's ladder on a hump up, grabbed it, And then I just, as fast as I could, I pulled up because I didn't want that jet ski to slam into me.
Right.
And I made it up far enough, and I just remember hearing that jet ski just slam, slam, slam. I'm like, I think that's probably more than the $200 limit on my credit card.
That's a
And
cheap jet ski, 200 bucks?
Cheap jet ski, and I climbed up to the bridge wing, and the captain was there, and the executive officer was there, and the whole bridge. And I was the captain's phone talker, by the way.
Okay.
So someone else had to stand into. My LPO was standing there doing my job. The first class was doing the job of the junior third class, and I jump over the bridge wing, and I'm just soaked and I've been out the night before, and I'm unshaven. I'm like, permission to come aboard, sir. And the captain said, son, 25 years I've been in this Navy. Never seen anything quite like that before. Why don't you go down, get cleaned up, come on back, and let's talk about this. Be in your dress white uniform, son. It's going to be a serious talk.
It's going to be a real talk.
Oh, it was like a captain's mast, and I thought I was going to get busted back to seaman recruit. But instead, you know, he just said that was an amazing ingenuity, and, you know, nothing happened.
Damn. You got off. I mean, it was probably some serious conversations on, all right, nobody can laugh when he comes in this room. And then they had to laugh for like 10 minutes, and then they all had to recompose themselves and be like, all right, but for real, for real, when YN3, PN3 Streit comes in, you got to lock that shit down. Like, you got to lock it down. Like, this is serious. We can't have people doing this. So get it out.
He had assembled what I felt like was a true court martial. I mean, you know, usually a captain's mast, it was the captain and the XO and, you know, maybe your division officer. This was every officer that wasn't on watch was there, and they were in their dress uniforms. It was terrifying. It was, I mean, and he...
Yeah, because they all wanted to see what the hell happened. Oh. What the hell happened to the jet ski, by the way?
Yeah, I don't know. You know, they when I got, you know, I eventually got a credit card bill for $200. It maxed out my.
Cool.
The guy maxed out my credit card.
But knock yourself out.
Yeah, $200.
$200.
You know, and
well worth it.
It was well worth it, and here I am telling that story 30-something years later.
That's crazy.
But you know, it was.
All right, so where were we? Portugal. That was close to wherever the hell
Portugal.
this happened, right? Yeah. But you went to Portugal.
Yes. So I'm in Portugal. And the legendary location in Portugal, we went to a castle that was built by his parents were from Portugal, but he opened, his family were coffee barons. They were the first coffee barons in Brazil, and they shipped the coffee back to Europe. And again, this is another legend about someone that had mad money. And he created this castle. He was an alchemist. He believed in immortality. And he created, he really was a big inspiration to Steven Spielberg because he created this thing called the Well of Souls. And it's really, I would love to go back to this particular castle.
The Well of Souls.
The Well of Souls. It was an inverted tower that went, he believed in sacred geometry and sacred math. You know, if you know anything about masonry, there's the whole Solomon's temple was created by the architect Simon Abiff using sacred geometry passed down. But he believed in sacred architecture, alchemy, numerology, and immortality, and he created this inverted well that had 9 levels that were representative of Dante's Inferno, but the tower was like very similar to any tower that you would see like in any castle, but it went into the ground. And at the very bottom there was a Templar Knight's emblem, and it's believed that he might have been, because of his family's wealth, that he might have been the recipient of knowledge about the Knights Templar. But this whole... Did
the Knights Templar have knowledge, or did they have a lot of money?
The Knights Templar had a lot of money because they possessed a great deal of knowledge. The Knights Templar were among the first true bankers in the world. The Knights Templar had so much wealth that they were loaning money to the King of France. They were loaning money to these kings all over Europe because the kings didn't, they didn't have good advisors, but the Knights Templar had wealth and they had power. And that, to get away from the story I was just telling, that was when I knew I was going to do a segment about the Knights Templar, President Michael Lawler at the time called me up and said, Eric, we haven't seen you in the club in a while, you're shirking your duties as past president. I said, well, I'm going all over the world right now doing this show, Legendary Locations, and he said, well, you're in LA now, right? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm trying to cast this thing in Portugal. It's got to be about the Knights Templar. I'm telling the story of the grand, the first Jacques de Molay, who was the master of the Templars, the last one, before the Templars were destroyed and went underground. And he said, well, I'm one of the modern day Knights Templar. I'm like, what the? And he is. He's got his, he is, Michael's a fascinating guy.
Yeah.
And he is involved in charitable organizations all over the world, but he is the treasurer for the Knights Templar. And he said, and you're telling the story of Jacques de Molay? And I'm like, yeah. And he said, I want to come do it with you. And I'm like,
So he hopped on a plane.
he
That's how it's done. Way to go, Michael.
He said, I would love to. He said, if it's a one, he said, I've long been a student of Jacques de Molay, and I love, the history and the lore of the Knights Templar and what they stand for. And if you're doing Jacques de Molay's story, I would like to portray Jacques de Molay, and I can even bring my own uniform and costume.
Oh.
And
I think we've seen him in that at the club.
We have
not?
seen him in that at the club, but what was, he showed up in Portugal, and he played Jacques de Molay. We went to an 11th century castle that we were able to get.
And this is him, right? As Jacques de Molay.
That right there. That's a great picture of
Past President Michael Lawler.
Michael Lawler portraying Jacques de Molay. I think I've got several
looking pretty
still
good there.
photos through there. Let's scan through there, Andy. And there he is with the Holy Grail, the cup of Christ.
Ah, you did it accurate to the Indiana Jones portrayal.
Yeah, but we absolutely did.
Is that the actual Holy Grail from Indiana Jones?
No, that is the actual Holy Grail that Jesus Christ used at the Last Supper.
Oh, good. How did you get that?
I just called Jesus up and I said, hey, man, can I borrow the Grail? And he said, yeah.
I thought you were going to say you found it down in Argentina or something.
I found it at a prop store in North Hollywood, but the best Holy Grail $13 will buy. But look at it. I mean, it's amazing. Let's see. There, we shot a couple of great fights. We found a stunt team that had Templar costumes, but they also had Moor costumes, and we put on a hell of a battle right in this 11th century castle. Sword fighting, fist fighting, flips, bumps, and ultimately we got to burn Jacques de Molay, President Michael Lawler, at the stake.
So we actually have the video of that, which is awesome.
Oh, fantastic! We got the video?
Yeah. So this is
wow.
Jacques de Molay portrayed by our past president of the club, Michael Lawler.
Oh, let's see
but we have the video. I believe it's the 4th slide there. So
I did not know we had the video.
Let's roll that
awesome.
video.
I've been waiting to see this.
He imprisons the order's top brass, including its Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, on a trumped-up charge of heresy. The big finish is de Molay's public execution in 1314. He burns at the stake, and legend holds that as the flames consume him, de Molay hisses a death curse at the king. Come on, you know how these things work.
So that's Michael Lawler. Was that his line? Was that his actual scream?
That was his actual scream.
Nice.
And we did a lot of different takes of that. And when you're burning someone at the stake, and it was the last thing we were doing that day, and we were trying everything.
You have a Bic lighter and.
What we did, we tried. I'd done, some special effect. No. Michael, he was a consummate pro. He was there. He was at the stake. He was screaming. He was on a pyre. But you put the flames in front of the camera, and we were trying to figure out what we could get to burn and have the flame in the foreground that it would look like Michael was getting burned. And we tried it with paper, which didn't work. Then we tried it with tape. We wrapped tape on a stick and lit it up with gasoline, and that worked okay, but the smoke was so black we couldn't see Michael. And you know what we ultimately used?
What's that?
Marshmallows.
Marshmallows. So those were actual practical flames?
No, those were special effects
That's
flames.
what I thought.
Because they literally said, I believe it was something to the effect of, it looks too real.
Nah. So then they had to back it off and do special flight.
Yeah, and I also did like a clean shot without real flames, so they could have the option of doing it in post, laying some flames.
Man, I wish we had that footage.
I don't think they'll give it to me, but it's we could recreate it right up on the roof.
Yeah?
I think we could. Michael's still got
Where's
his
Michael?
costume.
Michael, you need to come to the club with your costume. We're going to have s'mores on the roof. Don't worry about anything else.
No, you can do the great thing about I worked for a guy named Fred Weintraub who did the film Enter the Dragon, and he was the brainchild behind Woodstock, the documentary. But he was a master of low budget filmmaking, and I spent a season in Lithuania doing a series called The New Adventures of Robin Hood, and it was all that very low budget, use what you've got mentality. And I learned so much from this guy, and he's like, you can always figure it out, just don't stop shooting.
Yeah.
And someone had a bag of marshmallows and it just didn't look right, so we put a bunch of marshmallows on a stick, and me and the PAs were holding it in the foreground, and I'm looking at the monitor to make sure it looked good, and it was so very convincing. They're like, you look like you're really burning this guy at the stake, and the network said, you got to change that. Anyway, but what was really so much fun about that is, Michael and I were in Portugal together, and we got to see all of these amazing castles. And Portugal is another, we didn't do a segment about it, but the Legend of Fatima. If you know anything about Catholicism, there's a legend of Fatima who received a message from God. And she's been beatified, and I think she's on her way to becoming a saint, but it is... she got a message with God and shared it with the local priest, who then shared it with, the cardinal, who shared it with the Monsignor, and it eventually made it to the Pope. And this 8-year-old child was believed to be a messenger of God, and she's now been beatified and is on her way to sainthood. And Harvey Keitel just was in a film. They were making a film about the three ladies of Fatima while we were there, and Michael and I stayed in Fatima. But every night they do this amazing candlelight procession.
Every night?
Every night of the year. And I had some pictures, and I thought that I'd sent them, but I didn't. And then we had the audio problems. So,
oh, well.
But Michael and I did the procession, and it was really, just like when you're in those legendary locations that are haunted, and you feel that sense of horror and terror, and you can, this was, quite the opposite. It was a feeling of, peace and serenity, and thousands of people from all over the world, doing a candlelight march around an ancient village, It was very cool to be able to do that, particularly to do it with Michael, because, he is, just a great guy and a world traveler. He's sailed around the world multiple times, but to just get to hang out and spend time with him, and see all of these, timeless places, to actually get to share an adventure with a fellow member of the Adventurers Club.
And that is one of the cool things about the Adventurers Club, right? Is, you have all these opportunities.
Yeah.
And hopefully you're in a position where, when that opportunity comes up, you can jump on it and go.
That's right.
That's
right.
That's super cool.
So, of all, again, I was not the showrunner on legendary locations.
You might as well have been.
No, I tell you what.
Who was the showrunner?
A very talented guy by the name of Roger Roddy. And I think he came to the club one night, maybe to scout as a potential location. But he is now, I think, doing just a phenomenal show called Expeditions Unknown, last I heard. But he was very talented. Show running, that's a hard gig.
Yeah.
And I love doing it, but what I love more is just being in the field and traveling and directing and producing, and that's kind of where my heart is, and that's what I'm pretty good at. I just like, to be able to get paid to go around the world doing cool stuff and seeing cool things. As a showrunner, you have to stay home and man the fort.
You don't get to go out in the
you
field.
You don't get to go out. Not always. I did this phenomenal show called Trip Testers, and I was the showrunner. It was another Travel Channel show, and we did 2 episodes in Hawaii and Arizona and Las Vegas and Memphis, Tennessee, and all of these great locations, and it was all about food and adventure. And I was a showrunner. I'm like, yeah, I'm the showrunner. I'm going to go do all this food and adventure. I'm like, no, you're staying home. You're not.
Bummer.
You're staying. I got to go. I did the episode. I did the Vegas episode. And I did the pilot here.
Oh, you
in
got to
LA.
go to Vegas. Cool.
I can drive to Vegas, you know,
Right.
but there were so many cool things on that show, and that's when I kind of thought, you know,
It's not always the best gig.
not always the best gig, you know, because then you're sending all your people out to these phenomenal locations and they're having all the fun. It was great for me at the time because Sydney was a little boy and I got to go home and see him every night and we played and we hung out. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, the show running is a great gig and it, you know, it's certainly well compensated, but field producing or supervising producing or segment producing, you know, all of that stuff that gets you out there in the thick of it, that's where the adventure is.
Right.
And, you know, I just wrapped up, I did season 10, after Legendary Locations, I did season 10 and 12 of the Great Food Truck Race. And we got to go, you know, it was a food, it was my first
Oh
competition
man, I get so
show.
fat on that kind of show.
Oh, I did. I gained a lot of weight on that show because, you know, you've got like a dozen food trucks in one season, and then I did season 12, and that was 9 food trucks. And, you know, at the end of the day, if they haven't sold the food, guess where it's going? It's going home to my refrigerator.
Yeah.
Going back to my hotel so I can keep that per diem. And just, I mean, and there's some world-class chefs
Oh yeah.
competing in the Great Food Truck Race. I mean, there's a guy named Daryl Johnson with a company called NOLA Creations. It's his company, and he now has a food truck. But he trained under Emeril Lagasse in New Orleans, and
Got some good jambalaya and boudin balls and
boudin balls. The best, I tell you, best beignets I've ever had were made on a food truck by
Yeah.
Daryl Johnson. And
not Cafe Du Monde.
I love now. Let me tell you, I have never been to New Orleans when I didn't go to Cafe Du Monde, and I've also never waited in line.
You've never waited in line at Cafe Du Monde?
I've never waited in line at Cafe Du Monde.
The thing is there's just a little bit too much powdered sugar in there.
There's no such thing as too much powdered sugar.
Yeah,
in
when it balls
anything.
up, it's not
No.
powdered anymore. That's too much.
Then you must have, you see, when I go to New Orleans, I don't wait in line.
How do they even have that much powdered sugar to put in each bag?
It's an industry, man. If you're not, you know, the
I want it sprinkled on there. I feel like some food truck beignets, like you said.
food truck
Best beignets.
If you can go to NOLA Creations, I think he's in Lafayette right now. If you go to NOLA Creations, the food truck is running. He's doing great. He actually won. His team won the Great Food Truck Race. They won the $50,000, and he bought a food truck.
Nice.
And he's
What was
killing
he
it.
operating out of before?
He was a chef. He's a chef. He's a high-end chef that, like I said, trained under Emeril Lagasse. And after Hurricane Katrina, he relocated, I think to Georgia. And he was just, you know, trying to start over there. And he had the opportunity to do a Great Food Truck Race. And he took it by both hands, and he took it across the finish line. And he really did an amazing job.
I'll have to look out for that food truck. I'm out in Louisiana every once in a while.
If you know,
So-
NOLA Creations, if you join him
That's
on
the
Facebook.
food. Yeah, Instagram. Come on.
He
Nobody's on
does it.
Facebook
I
yet.
don't know all this social media stuff. I stay
I
off
know,
of
right.
social media.
I wonder if he's on
But
TikTok.
He's
I don't
on
know
all
about
of it. You know, I see his Facebook stuff almost every day, and I am going to take my wife and son and go to wherever his food truck is. It's that good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I told you I did Buddy versus Duff, and we did a little show. After that, I went down on the border, and I rode on horseback with the Border Patrol and was down there on a little, 1-month shoot.
Yeah.
And that was a blast, you know. I like getting out there and having adventures,
Yeah.
you know.
That's pretty cool. So I bet we have some questions
You think?
from the audience. We think.
So there's actually people out there watching this.
I don't know. Maybe not always.
Andy, do we have any
Probably.
questions?
Yeah, we got
Two?
some questions in there.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we've got a few questions. First of all, welcome to everyone in the chat. Thank you so much for tuning in and bearing with us with our sound problem. The first question is, Eric, you mentioned you were in Lithuania on the New Adventures of Robin Hood.
Yes.
Do you have any stories from that location? Perhaps any unfortunate
New
accidents?
Adventures of Robin Hood.
Yes.
Bow accidents.
Yeah, when I was doing
Sword accidents?
Who asked that question just out of curiosity? Doesn't matter. Someone that knows. Okay, I was in Lithuania doing the New Adventures of Robin Hood. As I said, I worked for a guy named Fred Weintraub. Now, Fred was a true visionary producer, and he believed in you learning everything. So when he gave me this job, I was an office guy. I was working in his office, answering the phones, going and getting him coffee. And he said, "You got a passport?" I'm like, "Yes, sir." And he said, "All right, you're flying to Lithuania tomorrow. I'm not telling you how much you're getting paid. I'm not even telling you what your job is. Just if you trust me and you want to be in this business, get on a plane and show up in Lithuania. I'll see you there." And so I did. And during the course of that season of Robin Hood, I was an actor. I was a first AD with second unit, a second AD on first unit. I did some, basically anything that needed to be done, including picking up a broom and sweeping the soundstage. But what I enjoyed the most was doing some stunt work. And it was primarily a Russian stunt team that they were phenomenal. They did this amazing work with horses. And I'd toured the country in the United States doing a Wild West stunt show, so I was familiar with knife fights, stick fights, body burns, high falls, axe handle fights. I did that.
But in Russia, no stunt. We do.
Yeah, so I had really, really, really long hair at the time, because if you wanted to do stunts, if you could take a punch and your hair would fly, you got paid a little bit extra money if you had long hair.
Yeah.
So I was going to run down this corridor and fall out a window and fall, 40 feet. And over there, you didn't have the big bags. What they would do is they would dig a hole and put cardboard boxes, and there's a mathematical equation that you use to get the right amount of cardboard boxes so it breaks your fall. And because that's just the way they do it. And some low-budget films still do it that way here in the States, but mostly now they have the airbags. But this is, you dig a hole and you fall into the concrete boxes. And you dig...
Cardboard boxes.
Cardboard boxes.
Concrete.
Not concrete.
Might hurt.
No, concrete would hurt very bad from 40 feet. And you go around and you soften the dirt all around to make sure that if you miss or you hit your hand or you do something,
right,
you don't break a bone. And I was pretty good at high falls. And so I'm running, and I do the jump, and I've got a wooden sword. And I do the jump, and I toss the sword aside, the way you're supposed to do, because you don't want to fall on your sword, literally. And apparently the sword hit a root, or a tree root, and it bounced back into the pit that was dug.
Right below your keister.
A wooden sword
know where this
went
is going.
up. Yeah, the sword was shoved up my ass, basically. And
so it bounced back right in that spot, and it was waiting for
went right up,
right there.
Right there. And it just I thought I was going to die.
Thank God for those Navy years. Anyway.
You were there too. You were there too. We all have our stories. But so I've got this sword, and I'm not going to pull it out because I'm not a medical doctor. I know I've got a wooden sword that's a scale-sized sword where it is in a very unpleasant place, and help! I've got a sword. So I'm trying not to panic, but still I've got a sword where I've got a sword. And so they pull me up. The stunt guys pick me up, and they put me on a stretcher. And there was always an ambulance standing by, but in Lithuania the ambulance was a 1950s Chaika. Are you familiar with a Chaika?
No.
Well, Andy's going to pull up a 1950s Chaika, Chaika, and it's kind of a big limousine. And it doubled as our ambulance when someone had to go to the doctor or the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of, and so
But they had to kind of stick the sword out the window?
No,
or out the back?
No, basically I had to lay across this gigantic, the Chaika was like a 6-7 foot wide car. It's like a limousine.
Strapped you to the roof?
And no, I was in the back seat. They laid me across the back
out your
seat,
butt.
and they took me to this Russian, this was an older Chaika. This was even older. This was like a big rounded monster vehicle. But,
okay.
But you get the idea. So it's basically an old 1950s Russian limousine, and it's not too smooth on the road. Mm-hmm. And I felt every bump and every turn.
They didn't have the sword facing up?
The sword was facing up, but gravity does things.
It's moving around, yeah.
Yeah, it didn't. It was not pleasant. And so we get to the doctor, and the showrunner's with me, a wonderful guy by the name of Vic Bullock, and they carry me in, and it's like someone at some point had basically cut off a big chunk of the swords, so I could actually.
Is that your ambulance?
It's something more like that, but still a little more limousine-like. But I'm in, and I go into the clinic, and big room, about the size of our dining room. There's no furniture anywhere in this. It's very clean. White floors, white walls, lots of stainless steel. And they put me on, this metal. They didn't put paper down. They didn't put a blanket down. They didn't put anything down. It's just me laying on a steel examination table, belly down,
Sword up.
sword up. And then this Russian doctor comes in, and he's got this full beard, man, like a big, think of a 1920s doctor picture before they've discovered germs.
Helga went too far this time.
Yeah, and he comes in, he's like, okay, you don't worry. I speak English very master. Okay, so the problem is you have a sword up your ass. So what is happening is there's a sword in your ass. And me as the doctor, I'm a surgeon, I will remove this sword from your ass. and I'm like, and the guy seems like an absolute freaking maniac. And I remember Vic, the showrunner, looks at me and says, Eric, you don't have to do this. We can send you back to the States. I'm like,
With the sword up your butt?
Exactly. I'm like, no, Vic, I really do have to do this. I might go to the States when this is over, but right now, the goal is to get this sword out of my ass.
Yeah.
And
No, we can crate you up, put some packing peanuts around you.
so this doctor says, okay, all right. I'm going to give you some shots, but I got to tell you, I can't make the shots deep enough, really. I'm going to give you a stick. I'm like, why? He said, because you're going to bite on it, because, man, this is going to hurt really, really bad. I have never felt such pain and anguish in my life as I did the day a Russian doctor pulled a sword out of my,
Keister.
Yeah, and memories. That's showbiz.
Yeah, that's like a big memory. You probably remember a lot of that, right?
It was after that I
It's too long.
decided that maybe stunt work was not for me.
Yeah.
It was after that I said, maybe stunt work.
You just got to get back on that horse.
No.
Get back on that sword.
It was, yeah. But interestingly, that story is, indelibly marked on me. And I found out
bet.
later, the showrunner, Vic, it was like, he remembered it because we bumped into each other at Fred Weintraub's memorial service. And as a result of that, we ended up doing a film together. I was his consulting producer because he shot a third of a film down in Mazatlan. I got to bring this picture to Mazatlan. And
Like, hey, Streit, you still shitting sideways?
It was, no, but, he just, he remembered it, and, we got along well, and we've made a movie together since then, and he's just, it's just a great story to tell at parties.
Yeah, I'd say.
Better story for him to tell at parties than me.
Yeah.
But, that is the story of the accident I had in Lithuania. And what we also did in Lithuania, it was fascinating, is a friend of mine and I grew up together in Kentucky doing bluegrass music. And Lithuania, the Iron Curtain had just fallen, and they were just getting like music from the outside world. And they had this thing, they loved country music. And they tried to play country music, but it always came out sounding a little bit like polka. So you had these amazing Soviet-trained musicians who are masterful.
Always trying to throw an
do
accordion in
country.
there.
And we were at the Universiteto pub, the pub Universiteto. And we'd had just enough to drink that when these guys went off and took a break, we said, hey man, their instruments are still there. Let's go show them some real bluegrass. And
Were you guys musicians?
yeah, I mean,
drunk,
I think,
whatever.
well, a little of both. No, I'm a bit of a singer,
Yeah.
half-ass kind of singer, and my friend is a masterful guitarist.
Yeah.
And
But could anybody play the accordion?
we-
Or just leave that one on the ground?
the accordion and bluegrass do not mix. They don't go together. but the accordion and polka, on the other hand, do. So we got up and we started playing this bluegrass music, and the place, you'd have thought the Beatles had reunited. They went freaking crazy. It was nuts.
And the band beat you up afterwards.
No, the band jumped up there and started copying what my buddy was doing. Remember, Soviet-trained musicians, so they were playing like, they loved it. And when we were done, they said, okay, so tomorrow you come and we're going to make concert, okay? We pick you up at the studio, we pick you up, and we leave at 4. And
They don't mess around.
no, me and my buddy looked at each other and said, okay, we figured we'd be playing a little pub. Like, okay. And so they got, when the studio let us out at, usually, you got off at about 4 o'clock. We got out a little early. So we went outside, and there they were sitting there. And we said, okay, we had our bags packed, and we're ready to go. And they said, no, we leave at 4. Right now is 5 till 4. So now we drink beers. And we stood in the parking lot and just downed about a case of beer. And we were driving.
All right, time to drive.
And the driver drank the most. And
Yeah, but it was beer. It wasn't like he was drinking vodka,
yeah,
right? It's
no,
different.
well, no, they were drinking, and we were drinking beer. They had the heavy stuff.
They
And-
brought you beer. And they're like, you're Americans.
Well, we all drank beer, but they were also indulging in potato vodka. The Lithuanians love potato vodka.
Is there any other kind?
I don't know. I'm
don't
not
think
a,
there
I'm
is.
not a connoisseur of
I think it's all potato vodka.
yeah, well, on a lot of their labels, they actually have the potatoes, which I'd never seen before. And we were in a 1950s Mercedes panel van with no windows, and my buddy Jeff was teaching them every song that he knew, and we were rehearsing and practicing. We couldn't see where we were going. We drove for about 2 hours, and he said, okay, it's time for concert. And this guy, the main guy, a guy named Algis Klova, got out and said, I'll be back. And we're still sitting inside this panel van practicing. He says, okay, they're getting ready to announce us, okay? Okay. Because we drove up and got there, I guess, just on time. So then we hear, I don't speak Lithuanian. It's a very hard language, but to me it sounds like they say, blah, 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 Bill Monroe, blah, 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 Willie Nelson, blah, 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 Merle Haggard, blah, 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 Johnny Cash,
And
blah,
which one
blah,
were
blah,
you?
Jeff Weaver, blah, 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 Eric Streit. And the crowd went crazy, and we got out of the back of this van. There were 5,000 people there, bro.
Jeez.
And it was insane. we were playing, because we're not
Doing karaoke for a crowd of 5,000 in Lithuania.
It was off the chain, and so every weekend when we get done with the production, we would then go out and pretend to be, and I guess we really were. We were world famous in Lithuania, and we did all of these pop music, country music festivals all over the Baltics and even Poland, and and because we were authentic Kentucky bluegrass musicians.
Yeah, you're from Kentucky,
I am
aren't
from
you?
Paducah, Kentucky, yeah, man. And, in between,
That's pretty authentic.
it's pretty authentic. And, it was a good time. Maybe sometime I'll bring in some of our bluegrass recordings.
Yeah, where's that? Where's that for a program at the
This is
Adventurers
called
Club?
Legendary Locations,
I know,
not
I know.
Eric, the bluegrass
We got
musician.
another question in that chat.
Okay.
Let's get one other question out.
We sure do. The next question comes from Darius Databoy. I'm sorry if I butchered that.
Darius.
And Darius would love to hear any supernatural stories.
Any supernatural stories at all?
Well, we talk about quite a
We
few,
talk,
right?
the whole thing about, I am a big believer in the supernatural and the unknown. And I know a lot of people at the club think that that's silly, but, people indulge my...
I don't think it's silly. I just don't want any part of it.
No, I grew up...
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, most of the time I'd be like, I could probably explain that. There's probably a scientific explanation. But generally, I don't want anything to do with that shit.
No? Well, look,
I would enjoy experiencing it maybe. But past that, I'm done.
I grew up in Kentucky, and Kentucky has a history of tales of the unknown. There's some phenomenal ghost stories and tales of the supernatural and UFOs and all kind of unexplained things have happened around Kentucky for, since its existence. But, I always grew up with a belief in the unknown and the supernatural and ghosts. And when I first got in the Navy, my first base, I was stationed in Holy Loch, Scotland on a submarine tender, the USS Simon Lake. I got there December 7th of 1987, and I was there until December 8th of 1989. And at a certain point, I got rented an apartment in a little manor a couple of blocks from the ship. And me and a roommate, a guy by the name of Dave Tabor, who's been a guest here at the club many times, we were roommates and we were on opposite duty sections. It was 4-section duty, so we'd be home for 2 nights, and then I would have a duty night and he would have a duty night, so we'd spend the night at home alone. And it was a very big, it was a manor. It was called Belmont Manor, and it was on Cromlech Road in Dunoon, Scotland. If you look up Belmont House, Cromlech Road, Dunoon, Scotland on Google Maps, I bet it pops up. It's right across the street from a grass bowling alley, an outdoor lawn bowling. So if you if you go to Dunoon, Scotland, Cromlech Road, look for the lawn bowling, and then pull down onto the street view, and I'll show you the house. But back in those days, partied a lot, and I would kind of use these nights at the house alone to kind of gather my strength for the coming sailor's party. That's
Right.
what we like to do. But on the nights that I was at the house alone, I would just go home and turn in and not do anything. And I started hearing things. We had a root cellar, and I would hear things. At night, it was always after midnight. And in the dead of winter, I would hear this noise. And I would go and I would look, and the door would be ajar. The back door, you go in through the kitchen down to the root cellar, and then there was a door out at the back. And it was incredible because I kept hearing it and I kept hearing it. And then one night, I saw it. And it freaked me the hell out, and I went back to the ship. I didn't say anything to Dave, my roommate, and we worked in the same office together, and the next night,
What did you see?
I'm getting there. And this went on for a while because I would be alone at night, and then the next night he would be there alone. And when we were together at the house hanging out, never saw anything. And then, several weeks went by, and we were always, and finally one night we'd, kick back a few, and I said, Dave, when you're here alone, do you ever see anything? And he looks at me and says, like what? I'm like, maybe a guy with dirt around his pant cuffs and old boots, red eyes. And then he finished the description, and it was a ghost. And I went, we had a neighbor who was a very old man, and who he used to like us to buy. You could buy booze very inexpensively at the Navy Exchange, and he would, I think a bottle of anything, a fifth was $3.33, and it was very expensive, to buy alcohol on the economy. So this guy he was an old Scot on a pension. He'd say, Eric, do you mind going to the exchange for me? I'd love to have a bottle of rum. I'm like, yeah, no problem, boss. He said, great, man. Thank you, Jimmy. He called everyone Jimmy. That was his thing. Every now and then he'd call me by my real name, but it was mostly Jimmy. And I was like, why Jimmy? He'd call me Jimmy. He'd call Dave Jimmy. Anyone, how you doing, Jimmy? What you doing, Jimmy? Hey, Jimmy, how you doing,
Jimmy legs.
And I'm like, why is everyone said, after the age of 50 in Scotland, everyone's named Jimmy. So we went over and I said to him, I'm like, look, man, and his name, by the way, was Jimmy. So he didn't, it's like his name was Jimmy, and he called everyone Jimmy, and that was him. And I said, and Dave and I described this guy. He said, oh, that's old Curtis, man. Yeah, he lived there. This was his house. Yeah, man, you just described him to a T. I bet he's down in the root cellar, isn't he? Yeah, he was always growing sweet potatoes. He grew the sweet potatoes, and he was the only one in the neighborhood that grew the sweet potatoes, and he would always check on them. He was afraid everyone was going to try and steal them, and he was always checking the root cellar.
Yep, screw that house. I'm out.
You know, it was an amazing place, and you know, and it was not like a disembodied ghost, not like a white sheet. He wasn't transparent. It was a guy, and he was standing right there. You know, right, you know, as close as I am to you. Matter of fact, you kind of look like old Curtis.
Just without the red eyes.
Yeah, without the red eyes. But, you know, it was, you know, and you know, a lot of strange things happened in Scotland that led me to really believe in supernatural and experiences.
I'll tell you what, here's how it all makes sense to me.
How?
It's a giant simulation. People have postulated this before, right?
Yeah?
It's all a computer simulation.
Everything.
Everything.
We are computer-generated characters.
Yep, everything. So this stuff like this, you know, that's just some memory left over, the equivalent of memory left over, and it's just there. It just never got overwritten. It's
Just never
there.
got out.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a glitch in the Matrix.
It's all the Matrix.
Now here's the question, though. I mean, if that is true, if this whole thing, this whole world that we're experiencing is a computer construct, why would somebody, because obviously someone is playing our characters, why would they have
Not
us,
necessarily.
well, why are we here? This does not seem like, here sitting talking about
I don't know.
adventures.
We run we as people, as human beings, we run computer simulations for a variety of reasons all the time
Right.
to answer all sorts of questions. I mean, isn't this like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy or whatever, basically?
You know,
Something to that extent, right? You know, like what? You know, God needs to answer some question that we will never even be able to comprehend. You know, and He's got to build a computer simulation, and we all got to play our little parts, right? We're all little pieces in this simulation.
But if God is all-knowing, He knows the answer to the question. So why would He need us as a computer simulation to answer it for Him?
I don't know, why did He do this at all?
But if we're part of a big computer game, He didn't do it at all, because wouldn't that make Him a simulation too?
We could go the levels in the Matrix or whatever, right?
Well, I mean, there were 3 films, and you know.
Fascinating subject of debate, though, because like have you seen Black Mirror?
No, everyone keeps telling.
Great, like
Twilight
Zone-esque, but a little bit grittier than the Twilight Zone.
Really?
But they have a concept like this.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you know that Rod Serling,
wrote every story, and then we just have to.
Rod Serling, it's funny you say he wrote every story, because he didn't. He was a front for a lot of the guys that were on the blacklist.
Really?
A lot of those scripts that are, Rod Serling, written, produced, and directed by Rod Serling. Can you imagine in the days of the typewriter how prolific one guy would have to be to write that many scripts?
That is true.
They did 30 episodes a season, and he produced every single one of them and wrote.
And there is some pretty anti-American stuff in there.
Or pro-freedom stuff.
Or what? Yeah, whatever.
Whatever you want. However you want.
But like the McCarthy.
Yes.
Yes. McCarthyism would have taken out a lot of those ideas.
Exactly.
Or would have targeted those people.
Exactly.
Like you remember that episode where the spaceman takes off, and then he escapes the world that's nuking itself, or whatever, and he goes to a new world, and there's a bunch of giants, and they all treat him horribly, and then he's on Earth.
There he is, right there on Earth. Same thing.
Yeah.
Makes you think again about the computer simulation, doesn't it?
Yeah, who knows?
But,
I mean, it makes a lot of sense if this is a computer simulation, and every once in a while something glitches.
And that's why and do you think that could be why we have ghosts?
Maybe. Make a lot of sense.
Do you believe in ghosts?
I don't think so. I think that, big giant conspiracy theory thing, maybe it's a simulation, and I believe it in that context. And then I think, to a certain extent, all of us, like our minds, like we don't know how the hell our mind works. like, and again, in computer programming, we do these neural networks and we train neural networks to solve certain problems. And then when we're done training them, we can look at every single piece of that neural network. And we don't know what the hell's going on. We don't know how it's detecting an image or whatever.
The computer.
Yeah, we don't know how the computer's doing it, but
You
it's
don't?
doing it. No, that's how neural networks and AI and stuff like that, we can train it to do something, we can give it an input, and then we can tell it what we want the output to be, and then it can consistently do that. But we don't fundamentally know how it works. And our
What?
brain's like, yeah.
What? There's people that are telling computers to do stuff, and the computers do it, but you don't know how they do it?
Yeah, it's like a black box, right? Like basically, as a computer scientist, you build the rules for how this works, but then you start training it. And you can look inside, but you don't know fundamentally how it's getting from point A to B.
So but does that mean the computer is thinking?
Okay, what's your definition of thought?
Well, that raises the question.
These neural networks are built to simulate how a brain works.
What's to stop? I mean, computers have like more than we do.
Well, they can process. Well,
They can. What if
we don't really know how our brain works. That's the thing.
Well, but
like
you just said you
we're
don't know
trying to
how
get
the
into it.
computer does it.
Exactly.
Doesn't that make you wonder? Like, could you train the computer and then all of a sudden the computer says, "Screw you! I'm gonna like blow you up."
Of course. I mean, that's the plot to like Terminator and all these other movies,
Yeah,
right?
but I mean, yeah, in the movies. But you are a computer guy.
Yeah.
And you do this stuff.
Yeah. I'm an engineer. There's a lot we don't know. There's a lot we don't know
And you
about
just
how.
let the computers do what they wanna do.
We're like so far off the rails right now. But the original question was, do I believe in ghosts? I think that the most likely scenario is we don't know how the hell our brains work, and we invent some shit. Now, when you say I described this guy to a T, I don't know how that works. That's pretty crazy. But I think we invent a lot of stuff in our heads. We see stuff. I mean, go to sleep, have a dream. Your dreams are crazy. All sorts of bullshit running around in your head, right? So like when I'm alone with my thoughts, in this dark house in this middle of Scotland, and like I see a random person, shoot, I've been in my bedroom and I've looked at like our tree, like our hat tree. I've sworn up and down, and I'm laying in my bed that I think the person's standing there.
I agree, but here's the thing.
But it's not.
But my
But your brain
roommate
does crazy
described
shit.
the same guy.
So I don't know how that works.
I don't either. That's why I think it's a ghost.
Or maybe you guys, you're just in sync, right? Like you guys are drinking all the time and hanging out, and maybe you concocted this social story because fundamentally people are social
But the
animals,
old guy
right?
next door said it. Then again, he's an old Scot, so he could have been playing a trick on us. I don't know. But
Yeah, man. Like if you came down and you're like, so I saw this, this, and this, I'd be like, oh my God. You just described who that's old man so and so. And then I'd go out in the pub and drink like, let me tell you what I told these American sailors.
you have just like decimated the foundational belief of my life.
Who knows,
if that
man?
is true.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? I don't know. I think there's a rational explanation to a lot of crap out there. But I mean, hey, some stuff we don't know. But on the other hand, our brain is so crazy, we don't know what the hell's going on up there. Even what we see, we see things wrong, we remember things wrong.
We're still talking about the devil's letter that was written 600 years ago, 500 years ago. It's a mystery that still
And
hasn't
what did
been
I tell
solved.
you? I said, if I ever come up with a way that I can trick people 1,000 years in the future, I'm going to bury that in the Nevada
But
desert.
see, but you've come up with the way. All you have to, we as the Adventurers Club could go and buy some concrete. I know how to mix concrete. I do it all the time in Mexico.
Yeah, and we could stamp some shit into there.
Stamp some stuff in there, make up some crazy, get some rune stones and some Greek
So do
letters.
you really think out of the, 14 billion, 15 billion people that have existed, we're the first people to come up with this practical joke?
No.
Exactly. So that's why I'm a skeptic.
What if the pyramids are a practical joke?
Yeah, man. Why not?
You give me much to think about, Rich
Yeah.
Mayfield. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what happens. What am I drinking, Andy?
What are you drinking?
I think it's Maker's Mark.
Well, that I believe is Old Smuggler.
Old Smuggler.
I don't know what that is.
It comes from a plastic
Okay.
bottle.
Do we have any more questions left in the chat? 'Cause
We
we're,
do.
We're way the hell out in left field here.
We do,
The Field
in
of
fact.
Dreams.
The last question in the chat is from Larry Stern, who wants to know, as a stand-up comic, would you care to share some of your set with us?
Ooh, well, the last.
You want to do your tight 5 here?
No. Look,
Do
stand
you have
up.
a tight 5 still?
I don't have it. I don't have a.
Not after that
No,
sword.
No, here's the thing, man. Stand-up comedy is like, it's like working out at the gym. When I would get up every night and perform stand-up comedy, 6 nights a week, 6 months out of the year, I would clock a laugh every 7 to 8 seconds, and that's pretty incredible. But then again, I was playing the sticks. I was playing, Winnemucca and Elko, Nevada. I was playing Spearfish, South Dakota. I was playing, all.
You've been everywhere if you've been to Winnemucca.
I've been to Winnemucca, Lose-a-mucka. That's what I say. But I love doing stand-up comedy, but you can't, you've got to, Larry, for stand-up to really work, you have to have the low ceiling, you've got to have a crowd. You can't just, and I haven't done a set in, I'm involved in a comedy club down in Mazatlan, an English-speaking comedy club. And
Whoa.
Yeah, you did not know about the English-speaking
Did
comedy
not.
club in Mazatlan. It's at Hotel Playa Mazatlan, and we have one show a month from November through April.
Do you do stand-up there?
I host one event a year, but the show is run by and produced and by an amazing musician by the name of Cheryl Godet. She's Canadian, and she flies in comedians from Los Angeles and Toronto sometimes, mostly LA, San Diego, Las Vegas. We get really high-level stand-up comics, and they come down and they stay at Hotel Playa Mazatlan. And sometimes they do 2 shows, but usually, it's a great showroom. It seats 350, and it's once a month. And, once a year I will host the event. But, it's a lot of fun, and it's fun to get up and still, but even to do that, to just do my 5 or 10 minutes up front, I rehearse it for weeks. Because
It's not just some sort of improv.
you
It's
can't
it's
just,
very tight.
Stand-up comedy it's the only performing art that you can't rehearse. Stand-up comedy cannot be rehearsed. If you're a piano player, you can practice canon in D. If you are a violinist or a fiddle player, you can learn Turkey in the Straw with absolute perfection. If you are a football player or a baseball player, you don't have to be playing a game to practice. You have batting cages, you have batting practice. Stand-up comedy does not exist without an audience. When you're doing stand-up without an audience, you're reciting a monologue. Without the audience's energy to come back at you, you don't know how to deliver the next line. You might know the next line. Again, you know what the outcome is, but you don't know how you're going to get there. You know what you're going to say, but you say it different every single night.
That's interesting, though, that you mentioned the monologue, because have you watched any of the late night talk show hosts or any comedian that basically operates in front of a live studio audience? Have you seen them since they've been operating at home during the pandemic?
Yes, and it's hard. You can
so
tell.
flat.
You spend,
and they've adjusted a little bit over the last
who
2
did
months
an
or so.
amazing job is Bill Maher finally started using a laugh track, and it's brilliant. And he does intercuts of audiences from old 1950s sitcoms, and it's really,
because normally laugh tracks flatten it out a little bit, but I guess it's better than reading to your freaking basement, right?
Stand-up comedy cannot exist without an audience, and that's why so many of the late shows right now are struggling, because they don't have an audience. And I forget which one of them, but there was one of them that tried to, when they did SNL for the first episode of SNL, and they did the weekend update, they had, they tried to have people on Zoom and 3 or 4 people in the room.
It's tough.
Nothing is sadder than stand-up comedy performed in front of 3 people. You don't even want the laugh.
Those guys have been doing some interesting, at-home videos.
Yes.
They've definitely had to find
Fascinating.
their groove.
Absolutely.
But they've done some stuff. I think it was either A.D. Bryant or Kate McKinnon that did a Lighthouse Keeper.
Yes.
Recently.
Yes.
Which was hilarious.
Now, that's comedy.
Yeah.
Stand-up comedy
Yeah.
does not exist if you don't have an audience.
But even
in
what
the room.
SNL normally does, what do? They stand in
have
their
an
Saturday night live.
Right.
Live.
They have an
Everything they
audience.
do has an
Right.
audience, and now they gotta.
Right, but the closest thing to stand-up on SNL, besides obviously the monologue, which is sometimes very funny if it's a comic, and if it's not a comic, it's usually horrible. And then if you're really out of your league, they'll have you do a song and send the rest of the cast out to save you. But the closest thing to stand-up that exists on SNL is the Weekend Update, even though they're sitting down.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work without an audience.
Yeah,
and
it's
that's,
tough.
Bill Maher is the one who I think right now is doing the best job with it. Some night I would love to, I've still got my old set lists. The way I would do stand-up on the road is I would get up first thing in the morning, and I'd read the newspaper. I had a standard set list. My longest set ever was an hour and 10 minutes.
Damn,
Yeah,
that's legit.
that was hardcore. It was in, what town was I in? It was in Montana. It was the first day of deer season in Baker, Montana. And the trick to doing stand-up comedy on the road in these one-night stands is you are required to do a 90-minute show or you don't get paid.
You would read the phone book.
You do whatever you got to do. And typically you have a local DJ or the local weatherman or someone who's a local entertainer or a local media personality will do the opening act. And they'll be the host MC of the evening. And, they promote it on the radio or television or whatever. But then you have your middle act and you have your headliner. Now, the depending, on the strength of the opening act host MC, they would do anywhere from, they're supposed to do 10 minutes, 7 to 10 minutes.
Right.
And then your middle act does, typically 30 to 45, and the headliner does 45 to 55, depending on, how well the opening act and middle act do. And your job as the headliner is to, fill that 90 minutes. And have you ever thought about, just think about a 3-minute set. And,
Oh, yeah.
most comics do it.
And you're the only one talking.
And you're the only one talking. And most people don't even think about, time. How much time is time? But when you're standing on a stage and you're being timed, it is really quite amazing. When, 30 seconds is an eternity.
Yeah.
And a good comedian who really knows their craft and is really on their game, they can do 3 laughs to 5 laughs in 30 seconds. They can do a setup, punchline, 3 laughs to 5 laughs in 30 seconds. Now, imagine doing that where you normally get a great laugh and you get nothing but silence.
Oh, yeah.
When you think, but so we're in Baker, Montana.
I can't remember what comedian did a bit where he was like, oh, these guys aren't going to laugh? Fine, I'm just going to give them, I think it was some bit about like a magician. I can't remember what it was, but he was like, these people aren't going to laugh? Fine. Here's a rabbit in a hat. Next. It's just like the most hateful comedian magician that's like, I'm throwing up this time.
Hilarious.
Who was that? That was a famous
I have no
comedian
idea.
that did a bit on
I've
that.
seen the bit. It's a very funny bit, but that's his whole thing.
Yeah, he was
he's
like, here it is.
He comes up and he's bad on purpose.
Yeah.
And then he just starts.
But he fills up his time.
To be a comedian magician who's so bad that you're funny, that is some skill, man. It's like watching an actor portray a bad actor.
I mean, it's like the thickest skin possible, right?
Oh,
it's like you have to like not care at all about what everybody.
To be a stand-up comedian, you have to be totally committed to that craft and not care and be ready to fail, because you fail a lot. When you first do stand-up, you go up the first time that you ever try it and you do your first 3-minute bit that you've been rehearsing for weeks, you're always going to kill. You're going to knock it out of the park because your adrenaline is going, the audience feeds off of that, and you think, my God, that was fantastic. Then you go up the second time and you kill it again. And you're thinking, why is this so hard? I have no idea why this is so tough. And then you go up the third time and you die a terrible, horrible death. It is death. and you don't get one single laugh, and it's horrible. And now I'm going to show you, we never think about time, but if you're in stand-up comedy, if you're in television, if you're in any performing art, it's all about timing. So you think of 30 seconds, that's nothing, right? You and I are going to stand here or sit here, and we're not going to say anything for 30 seconds. Are you ready?
Yeah, I got scotch.
Time.
That was it?
That was 30 seconds.
It wasn't even a half a sip.
What? Well, you're
Yeah.
drinking wrong, bro. That seemed like an eternity to me. And I know for me, I'm sitting here live. For the folks, if there's anyone left watching, that is an eternity.
You know there's a little button that lets you skip ahead by 30 seconds.
I'm a bit
Click.
of a Luddite when it comes to the
That's
computer
okay.
stuff. So
I got a serious question to
Yes.
ask you before we sign off.
Please.
So you started as a stand-up comic. Obviously, you love being in front of the camera, and being a showrunner and a producer and a field producer, or whatever. I don't know the lingo. That's different. You're not in front of the camera, but it also affords you the opportunity to travel and see all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Which would you rather do? Do you want to be in front of the camera, or do you want to be that guy that runs it and puts it all together?
You know, I love what I do. I love being a part. I grew up in Paducah, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
And from the time my earliest memories were of I remember laying in my baby bed and hearing the theme of The Tonight Show, da 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 da, and wondering what the hell that was. And then I would hear a guy talking, and I'd hear laughter, and I wanted so much to be a part of that, whatever it was. And I remember pulling myself up and over, and as a baby, like probably a year and a half old, pulling myself up over the wall of my crib and falling to the ground, thump. And
Yeah, babies do that.
I did.
I'm
that.
learning that
I did that
as a father.
and I did it, and I would go from my end of the house all the way out to the converted garage. I remember the red shag carpet and the black leather love seat and a big long couch and the giant box television, and I would hide behind the love seat and the big couch and watch through the cracks. I would watch the Johnny Carson doing his monologue and talking to his guests, and the crowd would laugh, and it just, to me, it seemed like the most exciting thing ever, and I just knew that I wanted to be, I wanted to be a part of it, and I wanted to be in that world, and I wanted to do that, and from the age of far back as I can remember, I'd say, Mom, I want to be on TV. I want to be on TV. And there was a lot of local television in those days, and I would go, my mom would take me to put me on the Popeye show, or Romper Room, or the Uncle Briggs show, or whatever happened to be a local kid's show. If it had a studio audience, I was in it. And then, I started doing community theater when I was 11, and then I started working for Angelo Poffo, who was a wrestling promoter. He was Randy Savage's dad. I started working for him when I was 12, and I learned all the ins and outs of professional wrestling. And I worked for Angelo, and he also ran a gas station. He had this little wrestling circuit, and he had a gas station on Bridge Street in Paducah. And I would, bounce off of the ropes, and I would learn all the moves. And Lanny.
You used to be a professional wrestler?
I wouldn't say. I knew professional wrestlers. I learned a lot of moves, and I love professional wrestling, and I played around a little bit, but I am nowhere near the skill level, and don't have the.
As Triple H?
No. But back in the
Rock?
Back in the 80s, it was a very different world. They were very much like carnies.
Yeah.
And but
Huge carny heritage.
Huge carny heritage, the wrestlers, and I got to see that every day, then I started, working at the television station, shooting B-roll and doing theater and working with these wrestlers, with their little local circuit, and one of them ended up being Randy Savage, who was a kid at the time that went on to be like one of, arguably one of the best professional wrestlers that elevated it to a authentic multi-million-dollar sport or, entertainment, whatever you want to call it. And, then after that I went in the Navy and I said, oh, I'm going to go to Hollywood. And I came to Hollywood and have just been fortunate to, find a niche where I fit.
Yeah.
So look, I tried being an actor and I would not say that I was very good at it. I made a living at it for 7 years and I loved doing stand-up comedy. But to be able to make a living and have a career in the entertainment business, knowing where I came from, to see where I am today, I don't care, man. As long as I'm working and doing something fun and creative,
You're happy.
What the hell else is there in life, man?
Yeah. Well, hey, Eric, thank you for coming by.
Thank you for having me.
reminding us we are the Adventurers Club of Los Angeles, and Hollywood entertainment is deep in our culture.
Dude.
And I'll tell you what.
Dude, can I tell one more story?
Yeah.
I'm begging you.
Does it involve adventure?
It involves adventure.
Did you bleed?
I did not bleed, but someone did.
You know the rules.
I know the rules, but this is not my story. This is the Adventurers Club story.
Okay.
Okay, so during this whole COVID thing, I've had some time off. I've had time to, I love to read and research. So I got this newspapers.com, which has every newspaper in the United States dating back to the 1860s. And I started researching the Adventurers Club. Did you know that our club had a symbiotic relationship with Warner Brothers?
No.
As a result of Captain Joe Skipper Dixon, the guy whose portrait is hanging above the refrigerator.
It.
Well, I've got the newspaper articles.
We got the cannon from Mutiny on the Bounty.
Yes.
Hollywood is rooted deep in our culture.
It absolutely is. And it's something I think that we don't even think, today you think about, well, the Adventurers Club, what does that have to do with movies and television? Everything. The Adventurers Club had a deal with Warner Brothers. The Adventurers Club and Skipper Dixon were deeply enmeshed with Errol Flynn in promoting all of the Errol Flynn movies that were released by Warner Brothers. The Captain Joseph Skipper Dixon actually did a stunt when the film Seahawk, which was one of Errol Flynn's greatest pirate movies, he collected water from all the 7 seas and christened the boat the Seahawk. And there are newspaper articles about it. And all of the Hollywood ties between Warner Brothers and the Adventurers Club. And then later, I think NBC did a lot in the 50s and 60s in the golden age of television. Television and our club were deeply involved. So, there's this fallacy that the Adventurers Club and show business, don't
Oh, no,
mix.
we're so intertwined.
Well, didn't we have like some crazy old low
C-SPAN's
budget?
been here.
Yeah.
We got that low budget, the logo on our channel is is from some movie about Angkor Wat.
Yes.
It's crazy. But again, I want to thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
Reminding us that Hollywood is in our culture.
Absolutely.
It used to be studios and big budget films or low budget films or whatever. Now it's YouTube.
And this.
And if you don't film
This.
it didn't happen.
If you-
So make sure you
exactly.
film it and come on
So-
our show. So anyway, thank you for being here, Eric.
Thank you for having me here.
So my name is Rich Mayfield. I'm our first VP this year.
Congratulations on that, by the
12,
way.
11.
Absolutely.
Signing off from the Adventurers Club in Los Angeles. We'll see you next week. I don't actually know who we're having here next week. It's still up in the air. So you're going to have to log on, check out our website, subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out our podcast, which we're uploading episodes, and we will see you next week.
I like the music.
Yeah.